Hello, people. Welcome to our podcast today. I'm Lee Cole 3, and I'm with my partner, James Proctor. James, how are you doing today?
Hey, doing really well, Lee. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you. Um, so we're going to talk about two things today. We're going to talk about Alan Kaiser, who was murdered by Sammy Gravano, and we're also going to talk about something that people don't hear. We're going to talk about why Castellano was actually killed. People say, James, when it comes to Paul Castellano, people say that he got killed because of the fact that he was going to kill Gotti or him. That's
Right.
one of the many reasons, though, ain't it?
Right. Yeah. As we go through this, that there were several reasons that he lost the family. So yeah, it wasn't just one thing that he did wrong. It's just that he went down a bad path. I would say the last 5 years of his reign.
Bad decision after bad decision. He was doing things before then, and he lost all respect from the men in the street, John Gotti and his crew, and so many other people too, including killing somebody that was a big money maker, had no reason to be killed, and he
No.
killed him for Vincent Chin, for the Genovese family. He had him killed.
Yes.
So, and we're going to talk about that. But first, let's talk about. I came on here 2 years ago, and when I came on here 2 years ago, my first interview was with Jimmy Calandra,
Hmm.
and that was in July 3rd of 2 years ago, 21.
Okay.
And the day after that, I was putting together a video, and I told Jimmy that we were on the Allen Kaiser murder. Then the day after that, Jimmy got a hold of me and basically said to me that he was talking to Sammy, and Sammy said that we shouldn't be doing the video. And so I told Jimmy that I was going to do the video. And the next day, he comes on his show out of the blue. I didn't expect it. He was attacking me just like
Okay.
that.
Huh.
So that's the story about why Jimmy Calandra and I stopped talking or went into like a battle for a couple years now.
Right.
But, he wanted to make his boy happy. He wanted to make Sammy happy. And I wasn't going to stop the Allen Kaiser thing. And
Right.
let me tell you, so let's explain. Alan Kaiser was 16 years old. He was walking home, and Louis Melito was in a car with Sammy Gravano. So Sammy says, and
Hmm.
they shot and killed him because he was a witness. But we're going to talk about that because Sammy, I'm going to play a video, a 4-minute video that was done by Kane Shade. And
Okay.
people, his channel is excellent. This is great work. He puts everything into it. It's like a timeline, and then we'll discuss it after it's played. How's
Okay.
that sound with you?
Sounds great. Thanks.
Okay.
The guy, we found out his name was Jojo, turns around and runs up the block like a bastard. He don't wait for nothing. He just boogied out of there. He must have seen something in the car. Louis jumps out and throws a shotgun blast at him. He hits him. I'm leaning out of the side of the window and I'm shooting at him with a pistol, but I miss him. We see the guy stagger, but he's still running. The problem is that Louis doesn't have the right shells. It was so spur of the moment that when we went to get the guns, the only shells that were there for the shotgun were bird shot, not the 00 buckshot we would normally have used. We didn't realize this until the whole thing was over, and we checked out the shells that were left over. Louis had kept saying,
Oh, by the way, this is Sammy Gravano's own words from his book Underboss. And that's what they're quoting right now.
Right.
I hit him, the motherfucker. I know I hit him, and the motherfucker didn't even go down. Now I see the other guy coming right at Louis. I don't think he runs at Louis to attack him. I think he's so scared and confused, maybe stoned, that he don't know where he is. I yell to Louis, and Louis turns around and hits him a shot in the chest from a couple of feet away. The guy topples over. Louis lowers the shotgun to his head and gives him a full blast. Then we went around the block.
Rolled down the window and just about, where, and Aldo took off like a rocket. Obviously, he must have been told that guys who beat him up was a made guy. But anyway, let's get back to it. He started running. Louis Melito got out and threw a shot with the shotgun. He hit him. But the only thing is it wasn't loaded with 00 buck Magnum. It was loaded with birdshot. Guys must have took it up on the roof and shot pigeons with it or whatever, and it wasn't loaded the right way. He staggered a little bit, but kept running. Then he yelled out, "You're back, Louis, you're back." The other guy ran at Louis. I couldn't get a position to shoot him. I wanted to. to protect the shooter, Louis. This guy was going at him. Louis turned. A matter of a foot or two away, they almost looked at each other face to face, and Louis shot him in the chest, and he went down. Louis then put the gun to his face or his head and pulled the trigger again. I couldn't see it 100%.
Phone. I wanted to get to know a little something about it.
Well, you don't know. This guy is really fucking stupid.
And that Sammy
Dunsky
threw some shots with a drive-by, something like that.
See, Sammy throws shots at a drive-by.
And one of the bullets hit the kid.
So this doesn't match up with Sammy's new story. This doesn't match up with Sammy's new story.
Allen Kaiser was a 16-year-old boy who died. He was killed by Gravano. Joy received the death certificate the other day, and Gravano lied. Allen died of a gunshot wound to the head, brain. That's what it says on the death certificate. He was not running towards Gravano like Gravano claims. He had his back towards Gravano. So I just want to show this. If anybody thinks that I am lying. Okay. I didn't do this a professional way, but whatever. Let me take the comment off. If anybody thinks that I'm lying, that's Allen's death certificate, and it says gunshot wound to the head and brain. Okay? He's a liar. Gravano is a liar. These were the newspaper clippings of when Allen died. There was many of them, news reports, newspaper clippings. So everybody knew, look, that's Allen. He was 16 years old. 16 years.
Okay, so I just want to. So James,
Yeah.
I know that you haven't heard much about this. So when you see the stuff, and we're going to get into other things that Sammy has said that don't make sense, but when you see that, what is your conclusion?
Well, so you have two different stories, right? So you have
Three different stories now.
three different stories. So basically, what you're seeing is that in the autopsy, the medical examiner report, I would say that would be, if anything, would be evidence, that would be truth, and because they know what they're doing. And so it sounds like he was hit in the back of the head and brain, and so obviously he had his back to the shooter, and so the other stories is about the kid running up to him, and so that just does not that just isn't true when you look at how the medical examiner prepared.
Sammy said that he ran at him like he was high. There were no drugs found in his body either.
No drugs on his body. There was, and then he was shot as he was running away or walking away. So the guy wasn't in a position of aggression towards Melito or Sammy, and the guy was trying to get away based on the evidence in the report.
And I'm going to complicate this a little bit more. So there's in the 302, they call Allen Kaiser John Doe.
Right, exactly.
And in that, Sammy states that he shot him.
Mm-hmm.
He never mentioned Louis Melito in the 302. Louis Melito was something that came along afterwards. Louis Melito's dead. And Sammy has a habit of putting dead people into his stories because Sammy knows dead people don't know
narrative better, yeah. Yeah, and that is true. So John Doe, so the one thing I do know is, what Angel was saying, they didn't know who he was until Sammy. So this murder happened on August 5th, 1977. Okay. And so this was not mentioned until, after 1990. So it's like
here's the story that happened. Okay. So what happened is once Sammy, they sat down and started the 302, and Sammy didn't know whether they knew about this murder, so he wasn't going to forget about it. He talked about
Right.
it. And the FBI went, after he told the FBI what happened, they went to the Kaiser's apartment or house, wherever they lived, and they told them. And then they were under the assumption that they were going to go after Sammy for it. But then they told them right there that Sammy has decided to help us with the case against John Gotti. So he will not be charged with the murder of Allen Kaiser. So picture being a family and they come and knock on your door and say, oh, we got the murderer, but we're not going to charge him.
Right.
This is why you have the family so upset all these years later. People say, oh, they're still, how would you like it if someone in your family was murdered? You know who the murderer is, and there's never any type of charges against him. He got away with murder. All he had to do was admit it, just like he admitted several other murders. He got away with those. I understand that's part of a 302, but you have to understand where Joy Faraci comes out and why she's so upset about this all these years later.
Yeah, and a lot of it was that we know that he was an innocent bystander, and so
He just walked his girl, oh, by the way, he just walked his girlfriend home.
Yes, he did.
He was very happy because he had a new suit. I believe they said it was a jumpsuit back then, something that they wore. He was very happy that he had that on. He had no reason to meet up with, be involved in any of that.
Oh, he wasn't involved at all. He was, had been in school. He was a former Boy Scout. He was an artist. He was had his girlfriend, and the reason and the motive for Sammy to do this was that he witnessed the shooting of the other guy.
They were shooting at him, and the other guy ran and got away. And Sammy was all upset because the guy beat him up. Sammy says he just hurt his ankle. No, Sammy, no, that's not what happened. But the fact of the matter, could Louis have been with him? Sure. But why in this 302 the very first time with the John Doe? Why did he say that he killed him?
Yeah, because I believe that's what happened. That's what he did. And one thing I'm wondering, I don't know if there's any evidence of, does it mention what type of weapon or, from the ballistics?
Shotgun.
So it was shotgun. So
shotgun.
Okay, because I knew there was the shotgun, but I didn't know if there was another weapon that one of them had. So, okay.
It doesn't matter. Gun's a gun. Anybody could have had it in their hand.
Yeah. The only reason I was bringing it up was the whole thing about the birdshot versus buckshot, but obviously
another thing that just doesn't make sense.
Right.
Okay,
so he's just shot in the head. He wasn't shot in the chest.
And then he's in the car changing the birdshot out. I mean, what do you bring a gun with you to put birdshot in it?
Well, it sounds like it was just Sammy by himself there is what it was, and he did the shooting.
And it's easy to put Louis there because Louis is a dead man. Nobody even knows where his body is.
Louis a dead man, and so that's one thing. And then also, Sammy, didn't care. He didn't want the guy. He witnessed Sammy shooting at the other one, and went up to him and killed him.
And you know what makes this worse than anything? What makes it worse than anything is this was a 16-year-old boy. Sammy treats him like he's a grown man. He talks about him like he's a grown thug. And
he says he's on drugs, and that's not true.
And that he deserves to die.
Yeah.
That's basically what he's saying. I'm sorry, James. What was that?
Yeah, and then tries to say, again, one of his modus operandi is that he will say that the guy is on drugs, and there's no proof of that or evidence. He was, in fact, there was no drugs in his system.
Yes, and the main reason I'm telling this story is because I've been getting a lot of things from people that said that we associate with Dominic Cicali now, so I'm not going to talk about it. That's not true. I was the first one on here 2 years ago to talk about it. I did a video on it. It cost me, Jimmy Calandra turned on me for it. Mm-hmm. And I would never come off of that. He was a 16-year-old boy that was murdered. He was murdered by Sammy Gravano. And Sammy Gravano got away with it. End of story. That's how simple it is. But I just want to make that clear. Dominic Cicali has his things in his life that he doesn't agree with me, and there's some things I don't agree with him. One of the things we don't agree upon is that the murder of Allen Kaiser. So I just wanted to put that out there so people understand. This is the truth about the murder. This is what happened. This is the evidence, and that's that. James, do you have anything to say on it?
No, I mean, this is, I think I really liked the video. I liked because it really shows what, the discrepancies in the story. And then, the 302 that, that you had brought up even back 2 years ago, that really, to me, that really is what nails it to me that he was, that was unjustified and, Sammy wasn't telling the truth.
Yeah. And unfortunately, there's no cost in him not telling the truth because he can't be charged with that. So he can say whatever the hell he wants. Okay, we're going to move on. We're going to move on. James found this great story. I never realized anything about it, James, so I appreciate it. I learned a lot from this. But there were several reasons why Paul Castellano was killed, not just the fact that John Gotti thought that he was going to come after him. And it was like, we got to get them before they get us.
Right.
Okay. So why do you think so many guys, and we're going to get into point by point on this. Why do you think so many guys in the family did not like Castellano no more? They didn't trust him. He lost his gangster card. Why do you think that was?
Yeah, so there's several reasons for it, and when I look at the career of Paul as boss, it seemed like he was one way before 1981, and then after 1981, he went down a bad path, and so he lost respect because the people in the street, they're going to gravitate and have respect for people that were gangsters on the street. There was an arrangement in place that Neil Delacroce would remain underboss. He would also be responsible for all of the traditional street rackets. So he is more of a street boss. And then you've got Paul that was actually put in there based on his relationship of being the brother-in-law and cousin of, Carlo Gambino. And also the thing was that Carlo Gambino wanted Paul to focus on the white collar crimes, the unions, anything related to white collar rackets. And so through time, Paul really became greedy. He also lost touch with the people, in his, on the street, because,
Right.
it's just crazy.
And let me get to the first thing that he really did that bothered people in the street. Neil Delacroce. Okay, so it's like you said, James. Neil Delacroce, he was supposed to. That was supposed to be his underboss.
Yes.
So when he started he basically started. He stopped his meetings and stuff that he was having at his house. There were meetings, and all of a sudden they became far and apart. And so what he did is he went over Delacroce, and then he started treating Tommy Bellotti like he was the underboss.
Yeah.
That was the guy that he would go to and tell everything. So he was kind of phasing Neil Delacroce out. And the guys on the street knew this. Would you say that's the number one? That's one of the top 5 reasons this guy got killed?
Yeah, exactly. So what was happening was that, you have at the beginning, the first few years, you saw Castellano, he would go to the Veterans and Friends Social Club. He would see his capos there at the social club. He would talk with Neil Delacroce on an ongoing basis, and so they had that arrangement in place is working pretty good. The separation of power, and then later, as there's more, I guess, scrutiny on Paul and the feds basically going into looking deeper into his rackets, then he decided that he wasn't going to be out in the social clubs. He was not going to be around anyone except for a few select people that would come up to his mansion called the White House there on Top Hill. And so he lost all his relationships, and pretty much all of his I guess orders would be going through Tony Bellotti instead of Neil Delacroce.
Okay, and then we're going to get to another reason, and you can explain this story to us. Frank Piccolo, okay, basically Frank Piccolo was a gangster. He was the hard, real deal. This is a guy that did nothing wrong. This is the guy that was very well respected in the Gambino family.
Yes.
And why don't you explain what he got caught up with? He was out on $50,000 bail. Explain what he was caught up in.
Yeah, so just to paint the picture a little bit, so he was out of Bridgeport, Connecticut, and in Connecticut you had 5 families that had different crews. You know, the Genovese, Gambinos, Colombos, the Patriarchs were there as well, and then even the De Cavalcante family.
And who
So
were the 2 main families in Connecticut at that time?
Genovese and Gambinos were the main families, and they happened to also be in Bridgeport, Connecticut, where that's where the Genovese had shopped to the Curcio family, and then you had Frank Piccolo that was running the crew there.
He
For
was
the
a
Gambino.
capo, right?
He was a capo. Yep, been there for 30 years. You know, the guy had been
Gentleman
there.
with the cigar right there.
Mm-hmm. Yep, with the cigar. And so, yeah, these guys, they coexisted together for over 30 years.
Yeah. Okay, and so what happened is the Genovese capo went to. He basically went to explain the story. He went to the Chin.
Yes.
And you take it from there.
Yeah, so he goes to the Chin because, you know, there was a lot of there was some disagreements between Piccolo and Curcio, and so you know, basically Curcio was saying that the Gambinos were encroaching into their territory. Understand, Bridgeport and all of Connecticut was open, so anyway, if anyone was actually expanding, that would be Gustave Curcio, because he was basically building up a racket of bars and restaurants. He had loaned them money, they couldn't pay it, and then he would take over the bars and restaurants. So Curcio became very, very, very wealthy through his loan shark and taking over businesses. But anyway, he goes to the Chin, and then the Chin has a sit down with Paul Castellano. And so, you know, normally if the boss is supposed to take up for your family, you know, take up for the people in your family, but Paul agreed with the Chin, which was a sign of weakness, and then the agreement was that, one, that you could kill the Frank Piccolo, and
so
then
let's get this straight. So he's telling the Genovese family, you can kill a capo in my family.
Yes,
And because of the fact that he's encroaching on your territory.
right.
And so there was some contracts, some union stuff going on between Castellano and Chen.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
And it was Castellano making the money, not the men on the street.
Exactly. And so that's what happened, was that he had these rackets in construction with the Genovese family, and he wanted to protect that because it was bringing in a lot of money. And so the money became more important than to do the right thing, which would be to protect your people in the street. A capo had been loyal for over 30 years. And then to make matters worse, you know, if in that situation, the protocol is, if you do have to take a made guy out or a capo, you don't have another family do it. You take care of your own. You take care of yourself. And so that was another sign of weakness. It was just horrible, you know, when you look at it, and when the people on the street looked at it. And so it's saying that even when you look at Sammy's 302s, and I'm sorry, his testimonies, he brings it up a little bit. He didn't know the whole story, but you know, this happened in 1981. And so even Mikey Scars, I believe, had mentioned it in his 302. So, you know, it was a big deal. It upset the rank and file, and it really started a chain of events which led to the 4 or 5, you know, to him, to Sparks Steakhouse 5 years later.
Okay. And so explain what's going on with Wayne Newton and Lola Falana, because Piccolo's involved in that. That's no reason to kill him, because he's doing what mobsters do. They're extorting people.
Yeah,
He's
exactly.
trying to make money for the family. So that can't be used as an excuse why, and Paul used it as an excuse, why he tried to kill, why he had Piccolo killed. Why don't you explain
Yeah.
that with Wayne Newton?
Yeah, so Wayne Newton was having problems with a tabloid newspaper in Las Vegas, and so the tabloid was threatening to release some stories or photos, basically blackmailing the singer. And so they couldn't, him and his, he had a person like a business manager. They couldn't get the paper to lay off, and so finally they happen to know this a cousin of Piccolo named Guido Penosi, and so he went to Frank Piccolo, and they were able to squash the issues. They basically talked to the tabloid newspaper, said to back off, and then they did. And then later on, there were other issues that Newton's business advisors were having, and again, Piccolo and Penosi were able to help resolve it. But then
Eventually, and just so people, eventually Newton went before the grand jury. Nobody knows what he said in there.
Right.
But it's obvious that he told them what was going on. So they charged Piccolo, and they found out that Piccolo also wanted Lola Falana to take out a life insurance policy and put his name on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, mobster asks you to take out a life insurance policy, and that's Lola Falana. At that time, she was like the biggest thing around.
Oh wow.
Anybody
Yeah.
that remembers Lola Falana, I mean, beautiful woman. That's Sammy
Beautiful.
Davis Jr. in that picture with it. And so Piccolo would say, here he is. This guy's, he's working the scene, behind the scenes. He's trying to make money.
Yeah, and then what ended up happening is that Piccolo said, "Hey, we know that," talking to Wayne Newton, "we know that you're going to invest into the Aladdin Hotel and Casino." So that was a new hotel being built on the Strip in Las Vegas. In the 70s, early 80s, you had a lot of the Strip today. A lot of those hotels were being built back then. And anyway, Piccolo wanted to get involved in that racket. He wanted to get into the casinos, but the problem was that he had a criminal record, so he couldn't be on the paperwork for the casino license. But he wanted Wayne Newton to allow him to be a silent partner, and he just kept on pressuring Newton. Newton got nervous about it, started fearing for his life, and contacted the FBI because he felt like he was getting shaken down and he wouldn't stop. So the FBI actually put a bug on the phone and was recording conversations between Newton, Piccolo, and Penosi.
Okay, and that's nothing to have him killed, right? He was out on $50,000 bail. If he got sentenced to jail, he would have taken his sentence and went and done it. So
Yeah,
exactly. It's not like he was on bail for murder or something.
Right, exactly.
Okay, so Paul tried to use that for an excuse, poor excuse. That's not the reason he killed him. He killed him because he bent the knee to the chin, because of greed and making money. He didn't give at that point, Castellano didn't care about the guy on the street making money. He cared about himself making money, and he did not want the chin to be upset. Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, it's exactly it. So, you had in June of 81, you had the indictment of Piccolo, but then in September of 81, that's when Piccolo was shot to death. It was in a telephone booth there in Bridgeport. You had two masked men in a vehicle, Lincoln, I believe, and then you also had the son of the boss of the Genovese in Bridgeport, Gustave Curcio. Well, his son Gus was the driver of that vehicle, and this was an official hit where Gus would have been able to make his bones by being involved in this hit. So, I believe Gus talked to him at through the window, and then the two masked guys got out and shot him with a carbine.
Okay, well, okay, and that's okay. We just wanted to cover that. And so that really, the guys on the street had a lot of respect for this guy, and they did not like that he was killed, did they?
No, they didn't like it. And it was mainly the way it was done. Basically, Paul's greed, and then allowing the Genovese family to do the hit. I mean, that's something that you just don't do. You didn't do that back then.
Okay, now we're going to go to another reason. This beautiful woman, Gloria Alarte, she was a maid, and people know the story. She wound up being on a bunch of bugs with Paul Castellano, but Paul Castellano had got the hots of her. Now, Paul Castellano's wife, Nina, that's a picture of her. You can't find many pictures of her. She's passed away. She moved out of the house in 1983 because Paul was having an affair with her. Not only did he was having an affair with her, he started doing it in front of her. And on top of that, right before this happened, right before the wife moved out, Gloria moved out and she was gone.
Mm-hmm.
So that it could have ended right there. But Paul Castellano went and found her, begged her to come back, and she came back. And so the wife left. So that news is all on the street that Paul is with this woman. Everybody on the street's talking about it, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. And the problem was that, most of these guys had gumas, but you don't do that with with someone in the house where your wife and you live. So it doesn't matter that the wife had left. It looked horrible. And it was embarrassing. It was an embarrassment. And so, Paul's with this maid, and then he also, there was other embarrassing stuff that was getting out. He had surgery because he was impotent, had a penis pump that got out. I believe his quack that was spreading that, but it is true. And so anyway, it's just very disrespectful, and it just made him, look like a bozo.
I looked everywhere for a picture of that penis pump. I couldn't find it.
Yeah.
But anyway, okay, so here you got this going on right here. And the guys on the street were also laughing, disrespecting him because she was a very homely woman.
Right.
They had a lot. These guys all liked Nina, his wife.
Yeah.
And he lost respect there. And then, you think about this guy. I can understand, this is his daughter, Connie.
Mm-hmm.
Paul's killed two men based on they were in relationships with his daughter. The first one was the husband, and the husband hit his daughter, and he had the guy killed. I can understand that. The second one was the boyfriend, and this is the husband, Frank Amato, that he had killed. Okay, and then they had the second one. 1 second, please. His name was Vito Borelli. He was a boyfriend, and he made fun of the father looking like Frank Perdue.
Mm-hmm.
So he killed him. So it's obvious that this guy, was having people killed. I can understand killing the husband for hitting the wife, but then you're going to kill his daughter's boyfriend because he said he looks like a chicken.
Yeah.
Beat him up.
Yeah, exactly. And you always hear about in the 80s with GOTTI and all that when it comes to murders, but Big Paul had a lot more hits and murders than the Gottis ever did, and that's the truth. And so, and this guy was petty. Paul was pretty petty, and he wasn't afraid to have his Roy DeMeos and.
Well, he used Roy DeMeo
Mm-hmm.
to kill the husband, the Connie's husband.
Mm-hmm.
So he used him on that hit.
Yeah.
And then he kills Roy DeMeo too. He has him killed by the Gemini twins.
Right.
So this is a guy that is doing a lot of things that don't make sense.
Yeah, it's not the behavior of a boss, especially one with respect, and then the way that he, people didn't like the way he was treating Neil Delacroce. Neil Delacroce had the respect of just about everyone on the street.
And here's so Gloria, another thing he breaks, he tells his girlfriend Gloria that he's in the mafia.
Yeah.
His maid. And there was an article written, and I'm going to read a little bit of this article, not too much of it. Out of jail on $2 million bond, Paul confided in Gloria. He said, "Do you know who I am?" I said, "Yes, you're Mr. Paul, a very rich man, well loved." And then he said, "Do you know that I belong to the mafia?" I told him no. "And aren't you afraid?" "No," I told him. And then here's what he said. This is after he got arrested for having bugs in his house. And see, you got to remember, his house was bugged. And he was out on a couple $1 million bail. So he kind of knew he was going away. But not only did that, he knew he was going to die. This is kind of ironic. "Men like me die on the street," Gloria recalls him telling her. And die on the street he did at the age of 70, right in front of Sparks Steakhouse. His murder was made headlines, and the New York Post printed "The Boss is Dead" on the front page. And he was crying, laying on her lap. This is how she described it. And telling her because of what happened that they were going to probably kill him. So the story is that it was kill or be killed, John Gotti's crew or his crew. But Paul knew he was doing so many things wrong, didn't he?
Yeah, exactly. And, part of it too is that Gloria was, you don't say that. Most of these mobsters don't even tell their spouse that, that they're in the mafia. And I mean, some do, but you're not supposed to. And then, Gloria, when I look at Gloria, to me, she's like the Yoko Ono of the mob, she's just,
Very
just
homely. Nobody
just
understands why.
homely. Yeah, exactly. And then when he dies, they pack her up, and she goes back to Medellin, Colombia. I think they give her $18,000.
$18,000, and she went. People,
Oh, and a porcelain clown as well as a gift.
I'm going to play this a little bit, and not all of it, just to give you an idea of this Piccolo guy that they killed.
Wayne Newton is an idol of millions of music fans, and they have made Newton one of the highest paid entertainers in the world. But all that money has brought him some difficulties, some of which are now the subject of a grand jury investigation. Our special segment by Brian Ross is about Wayne Newton's problems.
This is Palm Drive in Beverly Hills, California. There are two men in this car, detectives from the district attorney's office, on a stakeout in an organized crime investigation. The man they are watching, Guido Penosi, who says he is a roofing salesman. State and federal authorities say Penosi is a New York hoodlum from the Gambino mafia family, a man with a long criminal record, now believed to be the Gambino family's man on the West Coast, in the narcotics business and also in show business.
Penosi is now a key figure in a federal grand jury investigation of the activities of the Gambino mafia family in Las Vegas. An investigation that involves one of the big casinos here, the Aladdin, and one of Las Vegas's top performers, singer Wayne Newton.
Yes, that thing don't know where out of my head.
Okay, I just wanted to give you an idea of that because Lolo Flano was in the background.
Yeah.
They had the name messed up, if you noticed.
Yeah.
So we got, okay, that's just part of it. I had to play it. I should have played it earlier. But I just wanted to give you an idea. Okay,
Sure.
so we have him on the street. We have him doing these things, and everything he's doing, he's losing respect. Now you got John Gotti. He's out in the street. He's the real deal. And so you got John Gotti. The guys love him in the street. He's considered a street guy. And he decides that along with the street guys, Frank DeChico, who was part of Castellano's group of guys. Sammy Gravano was part of that group of guys, but they all decided to turn. His group of guys decided to turn on him too, right? Not just John.
Yeah,
Gotti.
yeah, and that's really what made this work is getting Frank DeChico had a lot of pull, and Frank DeChico, the DeChico family went way back. A lot of people from that family was in the Gambinos. So that was a big deal, getting his support. And then you also had Sammy Gravano as well. And so understand these were guys in Brooklyn. This was kind of Paul's area. This is where he had, people, like Jimmy Brown and Dane Marino that liked, Paul. And so, he lost a lot of people that, used to support him. And so, especially when you lose Frank DeChico, that was a big blow.
Yep. And so we want people to know that. And as we know, the Chin went on to kill more people in that family, DeChico for one.
Yeah.
And this is a guy Castellano chose to be close to. He pretty much picked the Chin over his own family, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. And then the other thing, there's one thing I wanted to mention that that's related to that is that you always hear about this edict of the drugs. You know, we've talked about that a couple of times before. And so Paul and the Chin, I believe Tony Duxcarallo, they said, hey, if you deal drugs, you die. But Paul was very hypocritical about it because he's, basically in his eyes, he didn't want to hear where the money came from. And so, but he still expected them to kick up 10 to 15% of whatever was earned on the street with drugs. And he knew that guys were dealing drugs, but, he's willing to accept it as long as they weren't getting caught and as long as they were pushing up money. And so again, another example of hypocrisy, and again, Paul's greed.
And when you think about it, everybody was saying that here you got two guys, Gotti knowing that Paul's coming for him, but Paul's coming for Gotti, and people think it's because of the fact that Quack dealing drugs. That's just a small part of the reason. But you just talk about the hypocrisy that he's getting all sorts of money from it. But that's only a small. We just named the many reasons why Castellano got taken out.
Yeah, exactly. And Castellano was, knew that Gotti had a lot of respect with especially in Queens with Bergen Street folks. And so one of the things about it too is Paul realized that, and Paul knew that it would have been difficult to get rid of him. I know Paul, one of the things that he was planning on doing was he was going to break up the Bergen crew and demote John Gotti. None of that was going to work. I mean, there was too much of a coalition of people that would have fought that, and Paul, really didn't have a chance against Gotti. But
so who is he going to send? Who is he going to send to the Bergen to tell them, oh, John, you're a soldier now, and all you guys are putting you in different areas. So
Proctor sick. He wasn't going to do it. So who would? Jimmy Brown, Danny Marino,
guys
that
that
all he had left.
Or maybe Bilotti and his brother. Who knows?
Oh, Bilotti. Yeah, I forgot. That's who it would have been, Bilotti, and they would have just laughed at him.
Well, you know what it comes down to with Bilotti. Bilotti was killed with him, right?
Yes.
But Bilotti's brother, after it happened, accepted it.
He did.
And he was a good gangster. He was good guy. He just accepted it and did his thing in the mob. He didn't go out for revenge. He knew what was coming. He knew that they were out of control. Basically, Castellano was out of control, and Bilotti was should have never stepped in trying to be the underboss for Della Croce. It was a bad move, and Bilotti should have known better.
Yeah, exactly. And so, and he is already, really kind of acting in that role, because by that time, Paul was not really seeing anyone except Jimmy Brown, Marino, and Bilotti was really the person that he's dealing with the most. And yeah, he really made a bad error in judgment with Bilotti, because Bilotti wasn't respected. He was a bully. He did have a big book of business. He made money. He was an earner, but the people on the street didn't really like him either. But Paul brought someone in close to him that he knew would
worship
him. Yeah, worship him, support him. And so the thing that he forgot to do, a lot of times, what these mob bosses will do is they'll put someone that's a rival as their underboss, because it's one of those things, well, keep your friends close, but your enemies closer. Paul didn't do that.
Yeah, he did. He did it with Della Croce. He just did it.
He did with Della Croce, yes.
Yeah,
and that was smart.
That he did it with Della Croce, but then he kind of took Della Croce's power away from him.
Yeah, exactly. And then and part of it too was, it'd been interesting if Della Croce, if he didn't have the health issues, and all that, would he have
Well,
been willing to do
he was
more?
facing time in prison too.
He
Was
was
arrested.
too.
He was
Mhm.
out on bail. It's not like, you know, you can only do so much when you're in that position.
Yeah, exactly. And so, and he tried, Dela Croce tried to protect Angelo and Gotti and did all he
He
could, but
protected Paul too.
yeah,
He told them, "You're not going to kill Paul," and it was a few months after Paul died. I mean, after Dela Croce died, that they did go after Paul. So
right,
they respected
exactly.
Dela Croce was old school. That's what it comes down to.
Yep.
Even though he probably detested and couldn't stand Castellano.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Okay, my man. Underneath here, please hit the like button. Very important that you hit the like button. Please subscribe if you have not subscribed. And besides that, that's pretty much our show today. James, do you have anything you want to close up with?
No, I just kind of, it's just really interesting because you only hear, parts of a story, like on Allen Kaiser, for example. It's really interesting when you see the big picture, putting everything together, and then obviously with Big Paul, the thing I'd always heard about was, is because of, Paul was upset with Angelo, with Quack Quack, and that was kind of what steered that, but it went a lot more deeper than that. And so, it's just interesting seeing, that Paul actually kind of started off okay as boss, and then through time he just, lost it and lost all respect.
And his girlfriend, when she did that interview, not many people talk about it, but the girlfriend said that Paul was afraid he was going to be killed because he broke the rules, because his house got bugged. I mean, he was caught on that bug with his girlfriend, the wife. They were laughing at him, the FBI, when they were listening to this stuff. They were literally laughing at him.
Right, and then to make matters worse, then the perception was, and it's probably real, that Chin was able to, was basically like a puppet master, and Paul was the puppet.
He was. Okay, my man. People, take care. Like I said, please subscribe, hit the like button, or the reminder bell, please. Thank you very much. Have a nice one.
Yep. Thanks, everyone.